So before I say anything, let me just assure you that this is not turning into a Five Nights at Freddy's fan channel. Um, I just happened to see the movie at the same time I put out that other video, and I couldn't not talk about it. So basically, for my spoiler-free review, it goes without saying that the animatronics were the best part of the movie because they were the best part of the first movie too. But the way they did the toy animatronics, it was great. It was great. They all looked absolutely identical to their game counterparts. I will say I feel like none of the four toy animatronics necessarily got enough time to, you know, be memorable except for maybe Chica, but they looked incredible. There's definitely a lot of pacing issues with the movie, which of course there were in the first movie, kind of notoriously. Um, I gotta say, I don't get when people complain that the first movie had too much lore and backstory shoved into it, because I really kind of felt like there was no lore or backstory in it. I felt like they kind of dropped the ball on including very much of anything from the games. I could definitely see that complaint about the second movie, but it's a sequel, so you had to have seen the first movie anyways. I think people who don't know the games will probably watch this movie and think, "Oh, people who played the games will understand what's going on now. This is all just fan service." And while that is true to a certain extent, the movies are also their own thing now. This movie's getting a lot of hate for the acting and the writing, and I will admit the writing was about on par with the first one, which is not saying much. I did like the character development, not necessarily for Mike because he's kind of just the same. I like him because he's just kind of a normal guy. Abby though is strange because in the first movie she kind of flip flopped between being like a classic horror movie kid with the creepy drawings and everything, and being indoctrinated by the ghosts, and like being a pretty smart 9-year old who has some sense of self-preservation. But in this movie they kind of do the same thing, and it's weird because she does the same thing where she kind of has brief moments of, I guess, immaturity or like ignorance. She just like seems to forget about the whole ghost thing and the whole William Afton thing, and she seems to regress into believing that the animatronics are just sentient toys, basically. The trailer showed a lot of what we all correctly assumed to be the dreams of Vanessa, you know, her traumatic experience growing up with William Afton. And those scenes, I gotta say, were done pretty well. It was a good continuation of the first movie with the whole sleeping pills, trying to find Garrett thing. William Afton, in Vanessa's dreams, he kind of made up for what I thought were some not great acting choices in the first movie. Of course, I love Matthew Lillard, but he kind of felt goofy in the first one. Obviously, it's inherently goofy to be a serial killer wearing an animatronic rabbit, but just his tone and his delivery was just not quite there, I thought. Because of course in Scream he was the goofy one. He was a killer, but he was the funny one who was like unhinged. And Skeet Ulrich was, you know, the calm, collected one. And I do think of William Afton as being like erratic and insane, but he just felt so goofy in the first one. But in this one, oh my God, I mean, he's terrifying from the perspective of his daughter, who is traumatized. And I mean, in the scene, he's like chasing her through the house. And of course, it's a dream, but you gotta assume stuff like that kind of really happened. What I thought was done really well in the first movie, and definitely pushed the bounds of the, you know, all ages baby's first horror movie thing, was the interaction between Vanessa and William. Because, I mean, it really felt like he did some horrible shit to her. And not in like a cartoony way like we think Games William did to Games Michael. One thing I feel like casual fans will not understand or will feel like they missed something is the whole backstory of William and Henry, you know, building Freddy's, building the animatronics. Because I felt like in the first movie that was not really implied. Steve Raglan casually mentioned, you know, the owner of Freddy's, but he never really said it was him. And he never said he built the animatronics. All he said was he stuffed the kids inside them. This is kind of the same in the games, honestly, because, before Sister Location, the purple guy was just a serial killer who presumably worked at Freddy's. But then with the opening scene of Sister Location and the books, we realized that not only did the purple guy have a name, but he was actually the founder and creator of Freddy's. That may be the kind of thing where people just picked it up from having a general idea of the games. So maybe it's not a big deal. It seemed like Mike was never surprised in either movie to discover that William Afton was behind everything. It also makes you wonder if all of this has been taking place in the same small town. How did he get away with changing his name and becoming a career mentor? And I'm still wondering why he was in the same park in the same different state that the Schmidts were in when he kidnapped Garrett. On the other hand, I was surprised at how well the explanation for the other Freddys worked. I mean, it takes a bit of a willing suspension of disbelief to believe there were two locations of the same franchise in one small town that both fell apart and were abandoned, especially after child murders. But they explained it pretty succinctly, and I gotta say, I was impressed when I found out that this second location was, predated the one in the first movie, like in the games. I just assumed they were going to do a whole grand reopening arc with the toys. But no, they did the whole prequel thing, and honestly, this is not really a comparison, but I might even say they did it better than the games, given that the second game being a prequel is such an incredible last-minute ass pull of a twist. Along those same lines, I won't tell you exactly what the whole deal is, but I was impressed by how they handled the Wizards and the toys and the classics and all of the different animatronics who appear in the movie and may or may not appear in the movie. You already know from the trailers that there was a decent amount of gameplay, as in perfectly replicating the gameplay of FNAF 2, and it was so good. It was ham-fisted, like it was forced, but it was so nice to see, because there was not much of that at all in the first movie. I mean, Mike was sometimes in the office just sleeping. The office, I think, just had one regular door instead of the double blast door, which would be hard to explain, but they would have explained it. And my God, they had the light buttons from the first game in the office in the second movie. The lit up buttons with the word light under them. So great to see, since they skipped all that in the first one. They even had the low poly soda cups sitting on the desk. It was so fun. I loved it. And I mean, the big open door, which in the game makes you think who the hell designed this, they make it work somehow. And it was so nice. And the gameplay scenes were so good with the Freddy head. And not really a spoiler, but they even acknowledge that Withered Foxy doesn't get tricked by the Freddy head. It was so good to see. Now, I know the big selling point of this movie for the fans was the appearance of Henry and Charlotte, last name unknown in the movie timeline. But I will not talk about them here because this is spoiler-free, and I'm gonna have to do some spoilers for some character analysis. So, let me just round it out by saying, you are going to like this movie if you're a fan of the games. The fan service is great, and it does not feel hollow or ham-fisted. I know Scott wrote both of these movies, but the first movie, it kind of felt like it was written by someone who just took a cursory glance at the wiki. With, the Balloon Boy toy, the whole Golden Freddy thing, and the repeating of famous lines. I know it was written by Scott. I think he was just scared in the first movie to lean too heavy into the fan service, but he does it perfectly in the second one. It's not hollow or ham-fisted. How many times am I going to say ham-fisted in this video? I don't know, Chewie getting his medal at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like, holy shit. A big complaint I'm saying about this movie is that it feels like the first half of a longer movie, and I see why people would dislike that, especially because Lord knows how long we're going to have to wait for the third movie. But no, I think this is not a terrible way to form a trilogy. It's kind of the same as the Spider-Verse movies, where the first one was pretty simple. It was for general audiences. Then the second one got a lot crazier, but it was obviously the first half, even though it was the middle movie. This is in contrast to a trilogy like the 2018 Halloween movies, where the second one was just killing, pun intended, time until they could make the third one, which ended up being absolute trash. My point is that Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and Across the Spider-Verse do not have the middle movie syndrome that a lot of trilogies have. They do spend a lot of time setting up the third movie, but it's like a new start after the first movie. It's not just, like a sagging in the middle of a bridge is how I think about it. It's not like that. Yeah, so essentially, don't listen to the critics, don't listen to the fans who hated it so much that they tell other people not to see it. I can't say whether you're going to like it or not. It was not, high art or anything. It was a Blumhouse franchise movie, so, make of that what you will. But I had a really good time watching it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was scary. I thought it did an incredible job with fan service. I thought it improved on the first movie in pretty much every way. Now, time for my first reactions, spoiler style. Spoilers incoming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I thought the way they handled Charlotte was amazing. She is so different from the games, or at least, the fan interpretation of how she is in the games. And by that, I just mean she is a heavy antagonistic force. She is the main antagonist of the entire movie. And this doesn't necessarily preclude her from having the same personality as in the games. It's a movie. You need an antagonist, and I thought the puppet was great because she's obviously so different from all the other animatronics. And honestly, one of the craziest things in the whole franchise, beyond Ennard Michael and William Afton's secret underground mad scientist lab, is that the puppet was in a children's restaurant and meant for kids. And they go even further in the movie and say that the puppet was all the kids' favorite animatronic, and they were all so excited to see her. It's horrifying, dude. That thing is terrifying. Maybe that could be a kid's attraction in, the 30s, but not in the 80s. Too friggin' creepy. So yeah, if I had to guess, Charlotte is going to have a redemptive moment in the third movie when, presumably, she's going to speak to her father, who, by the way, was barely in this movie. Only one scene, which was disappointing. But this is all part of this being the first half of a longer movie. And I have faith that a lot of the stuff missing in the second movie is going to come back in the third. But no, I'm guessing Charlie will have a redemptive moment, and this may be the Pizzeria Simulator ending, and I, fingers crossed that we get that on film because it would be incredible. I like that they're kind of combining Charlie with the fan interpretation of Cassidy, especially because it looks like the blonde kid from the first movie will not be coming back for the third, because he and all the other ghost kids kind of moved on at the end, kind of had their happiest day, which I am honestly surprised they didn't use that phrase. Would have been a good opportunity for some fan service. But no, only the blonde kid shows up, and only at the end. But he has a line about how he has been purposefully keeping William Afton trapped in the back room so he doesn't, resurrect as Springtrap. And I love that because, as far as I know, that isn't implied in the games, but I did always wonder, how long was Springtrap aware in the back room and he wasn't able to, punch his way out or find a crack in the wall or something. So they're kind of splitting Cassidy between the blonde boy and Charlie, which I love. Also, Charlie remotely controlling the toys, that was great because the toys obviously are super, super advanced. They're advanced for 2025, so they're super advanced for 2002. Being remote control robots, I thought, made it feel a lot more grounded than in the games, where it's kind of implied that they're just like a super high-tech AI, which, the game is set in 1987, so that is kind of pushing believability, at least in a pre-Sister Location series. Now, of course, the classics appear at the end of the movie to beat the shit out of the toys, and it was so satisfying. I loved it. But I I'll have to watch the first movie again, but I feel like they were way more advanced in this movie than in the first. They were kind of just regular animatronics in the first movie, I think, aside from their glowing eyes. There was no concept that they could walk around off the stage until we found out they were possessed, unlike in the games. But they seemed to be full-on robots like the toys in the second movie, and so did the Wizards. And the Wizards, of course, were the unused prototypes, which I was I was impressed the Wizards weren't just the classics. You know, I was impressed they went out of their way to introduce a whole third group of animatronics. I mean, because the whole unwithered theory thing is so controversial. I was surprised they didn't just make the Wizards the classics and either make them match the first movie or just, not mention the visual discrepancy, which, by the way, I think people put way too much emphasis on the visual discrepancy between the Wizards and the classics. The only, solid difference, as far as I know, is that Chica's beak is way bigger. Freddy and Bonnie have buttons. But it's like their head shapes. Couldn't that just be an animation choice? There's no canonical difference between Springtrap and Scraptrap, right? Anyways, I love the classics showing up at the end to beat up the toys because it felt like an intentional reference to, I think it's the Twisted Ones, where the classics come back to beat up the new evil versions of them. But I gotta say, one thing that kind of required explaining in this movie that I'm sure will not even be mentioned in the third is, where did they come from? Because they disappeared from the pizzeria in the first one, and then we just didn't see them the whole movie, and then they show up at the end. It might have been implied that they were all in the safe room with Afton. I can't remember exactly. That definitely could have been the case. Oh, also Abby being a robotics student. As far as I could tell, that also seemed like a reference to the Twisted Ones. I keep thinking oh no, that's probably not a reference, it's just a coincidence, as if the same guy didn't write the books and the movies and everything else. Also, Abby's teacher was such an incredible dick. It was so funny. Wayne Knight, of course, is hilarious, but I mean, I kind of love this trope where normal ass people like teachers are just unbelievably awful for no reason. It's pretty funny. They should have called him Mr. Atkins though, because what they found, right? Okay, now I can't resist talking about it any longer. Holy shit, that cameo in Vanessa's dream. Fucking circus baby. It was insane. Oh my god. I saw it with my brother and my girlfriend, and we all just screeched. I was like, I never in a million years thought they would even acknowledge anything after the third game, wow. God, I just, that blew my mind. Are they actually going to do something with that? Was it just a cameo? Or the classics and the toys are gone now, but are they really willing to bring in the fun times? Or is it just Circus Baby? In the movies, William has a daughter, but the end of the movie kind of implies she is now something else. But also, I don't think Circus Baby would work if she was an adult. But maybe they have another kid, And speaking of having another kid, holy shit, Michael Afton. I love that. I think a lot of people are going to hate it because I found some people on Reddit from a few months ago talking about how they really hope the guy, what's his name? Freddy. His name is Freddy. The actor's name is Freddy. How they really hope the Freddy guy is not Michael Afton. I never even considered that. I was like, no, didn't you see the first movie? They're doing their own thing. They're simplifying the lore. Oh, me of little faith. Now look, you can hate the reveal of Michael Afton. I think a lot of people are going to hate that they brought him in at all, and a lot of other people are going to hate that he is not only an antagonist, but so viscerally evil. But you can't deny that this actor was perfect. Perfect casting. Not for Michael Afton, for William Afton. He was so creepy, and I don't mean to make fun of this guy's face in real life, but he had such an incredible, Joker-esque, biblically accurate William Afton vibe to him. He felt like, security guard Dave from the Silver Eyes. He felt like he genuinely could be all scarred up in a wheelchair, like in the third book. And the best part, he was wearing a purple shirt and a badge, because he's the purple guy. I don't know if you guys knew this, but more than a year ago, I made a very long review of the first FNAF movie. It is now deleted because I was a lot harsher on the movie than I would be now. I also thought it came off as kind of full of myself to talk shit about the movie version while I'm literally writing my own TV version, which you should listen to, by the way, if you haven't. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Episode 1's out. Episode 2 coming this week. But one of the points I made in that review was I wasn't a fan of the whole yellow rabbit thing. I didn't like that Afton was portrayed as, I think I referred to him as an Easter-themed superhero. But I remember saying, like, dumbing him down to a serial killer who is not like a mad scientist and he just loves killing children and he didn't necessarily even create Freddy's. Bringing him back to that level is fine, but what made him creepy in the games was his inhumanity. He didn't have a name. He was just a handful of sprites that looked vaguely like a person, but they were all purple, it was horrifying. I mean, honestly, we're so used to the purple guy sprite, but like, have you looked at it closely recently and thought how fucking terrifying that is? But yeah, I mean, in my review, I said, William Afton in this form is not the yellow rabbit. He's the purple guy. And that's what made him so creepy. And this new character, Michael Afton, in the second movie, that's him. That's the purple guy. I mean, he's wearing the shirt, which, of course, the fans have always interpreted his purpleness to be like a purple uniform shirt. And his face looks like... I mean, he's always got like this evil grin going on, you know? He looks like Bill Skarsgård. It's just so good because, like, even though you see him on screen, he's a real person. He's got a real presence. He almost feels like a human incarnation of the purple guy sprite, and that is amazing. Kind of feels like, and I'm just making this up, but it kind of feels like they hired Matthew Lillard for the star power, and then they killed him off in the first movie because you had to have the iconic spring locking scene. But then it occurred to them that Matthew Lillard was maybe not the best choice for this character. And again, I love him in this movie. I love him in Scream. I love him in Scooby-Doo. And again, I think he is a perfectly fine, passable character in these movies. But he is nothing like Afton from the novels, which is, you know, the most clear interpretation we have of him. But no, I just love that they have split the difference and given us Matthew Lillard's Afton and also book-accurate Afton. He's just named Michael instead of William. Now, speaking of William, he was only in like one scene in this movie, which was Vanessa's dream scene, which I thought they were going to do like a few times, like Mike's dreams in the first one, but I think that was one of those fan complaints that they learned from. Henry, I gotta say, I wish was in more, but like I said earlier, he's gonna come back in the third one. Now, my greatest hope for the third movie is that we get the Pizzeria Simulator ending. That scene is incredible and sends chills up my spine. I would love to see that scene on film, and I think they can really make it happen, and they can make it even better than in the games, because in the games it's kind of confused, because like, what the fuck is Molten Freddy? Yeah, I know he's entered, but like, the classics are all gone. Springtrap has a terrible new design. Baby, between two games, she went from being like an evil mastermind to just being like a little kid who wants to make her dad proud, and that was a strange choice. But in the movies, there's a much more clear and concise storyline. I mean, the classics are gone now, but we could get a scene where Henry burns Springtrap and maybe Michael Afton. I don't know if he's going to become Ennard or something, but I think they can and they should combine Pizzeria Simulator and FNAF 3, and they should have Henry burn everyone in Fazbear's Fright. I mean, because it does burn down at the end, right? Have Phone Dude working for Henry, you know, because Henry was obviously, he was putting up those flyers in this movie. He wanted everyone to know. If they're really doing Circus Baby in the third movie, you could have at least her and Springtrap and Michael Afton and Charlie. I mean, Lefty seems kind of crazy, but like the puppet was hiding inside Toy Chica, so we kind of already had that. And that's the freedom they have in these movies. See, because in my TV pitch I'm writing, basically the whole conceit is that I am sticking to canon 100%. So, like, everything we know for sure is canon in the games, I'm not contradicting one little bit. So, like, I couldn't not have Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby and a different looking Springtrap in the Pizzeria Simulator ending. But they can in the movies. They have that freedom, and I hope they use that. Also, speaking of Fazbear's Fright, does anyone else think there actually is going to be a time jump? Because the post-credits scene showed Phone Dude finding Springtrap in the back room. Springtrap looks a lot different. He obviously has a totally different design because the Yellow Rabbit costume in the first movie was kind of not great. He looked more like a donkey than a rabbit. But what little we saw of him in the second movie, he looks exactly like the game. But I mean, if you're going to explain that away by saying he's rotting, Springtrap's first appearance was probably going to be more than 2 years after the first movie, right? Also, they decided to set the first movie in 2000 instead of in the early 90s. I'm not quite sure why, but I always said that would allow them to do the time jump from the games, which of course is controversial, but they definitely said 30 years after something. So, I mean, just assuming the third movie comes out in 2028 or 9, that would allow them to jump reasonably almost 30 years after the first movie. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen because there was too much of a cliffhanger at the end of the second movie. Of course, Vanessa is now possessed by Charlotte. Michael Afton is out and about. The toys are all dead, but Michael seemed to want to commit like a mass killing spree, which was not really fleshed out, but I mean, that seems important. That should probably come back. 2 quick character notes I forgot. One, this is a small thing, but I'm very impressed that they kept Michael's name even though there's a whole separate Mike. It sounds lame because that is literally the most common name for white guys in the United States, but it just seems like something a blockbuster movie would do to patronize its viewers, is not have 2 characters with the same name. Second, Vanessa is kind of Vanny now. She is a character from Security Breach, but, very loosely adapted. She's not in the future. She's a cop, not a security guard, and she is, confirmed to be William Afton's daughter. But now she's possessed by an avenging spirit. Charlotte's goals are a little more understandable than Glitchtrap's, but she's kind of become her final form now. I don't think she's going to have a homemade rabbit costume, but honestly, after the Circus Baby cameo, I almost wouldn't put anything past them, and I am so excited that they have moved on from the safe kind of milquetoast adaptation of the first movie. It's kind of funny actually, they never acknowledged Mike and Michael having the same name, which they wouldn't because, again, very popular name. I think College Humor did a whole video about why you should stop naming your kids Michael. But I will say they do acknowledge that in my show. Because, well, we all know Mike Schmidt in the games is Michael Afton, and I'm not saying he's not Michael Afton in my show. I just think there may be other ways to interpret what we know from the games. So that was kind of my first impressions. I saw the movie 2 nights ago. Been kind of mulling it over ever since. Can't wait to watch it again. Yeah, I'm honestly really excited for the third one. And real excited for you guys to watch my TV show pitch Bible concept, whatever the hell it is. Because I have already finished writing season 1, and I've already finished planning out all 5 seasons. Yes, of course, there are 5 seasons. And a few things that happened in the second movie, pretty closely paralleled stuff that I just kind of made up out of thin air for the show. So, interested to see how they compare and contrast, and what you guys think of either one. Drop your thoughts on the movie in the comments. Like, subscribe. Feel free to join the channel. I also have a Patreon where you get early access, free, ad-free videos. I also have an ongoing serialized story over there, which essentially amounts to the length of one novel every year in weekly installments. And you can get that for as low as $1 a month. Again, this channel is more dedicated to, long philosophical video essays, movie reviews, that kind of thing. But if you're only here for 5 Nights at Freddy's, I will not pretend that there will not be a lot more of that.